Hey everybody, how you doing? So, I started seeing a bunch of videos online where some people were taking plain old aluminum foil, crumpling up into a ball, and then polishing it until it has a mirror finish. So, what they're doing is they're pounding it into a ball with a hammer, taking different levels of sandpaper, and eventually polishing it until it is literally a round, shiny sphere. And I've seen some that even have like a mirror finish to them where people can see the reflection. So I've got a whole bunch of aluminum foil. I got different kinds of sandpaper. I've got a polishing wheel, which I needed anyways. We are going to make 2 different polished balls of tinfoil. I've watched some videos and people said it literally took them all day to make one of these balls, so I'm gonna try to work really hard and really fast. Right here I have 150 square feet of aluminum foil. In order for me to somehow figure out a way to use the same amount of foil for both of these balls, I figured, let's cut this thing in half and then we'll break it. Use this whole half for one, use this whole half for the other. That'd be the easiest way. I could roll it all the way down the hill and then cut that sucker in half, but that's just too much of a mess. So I'm gonna pull this whole roll out. You can see I've already started to make some cuts, and this is probably the worst way to cut aluminum foil here too. So I'm gonna try not to slice my fingers open. I'm gonna try to make this video not ridiculously boring. So probably we'll have quite a bit of time lapse in here and skipping over some stuff and only showing you guys the good parts. Wasn't a very good idea to try to cut that. I'm just gonna start taking them off one side and we're just gonna go with it like this. This is probably gonna take a really long time. Alright, so we got one that's probably 1.5 times the size of a softball, and then another baseball size one. I'm still working on this one. Probably will end up making this one a little bit bigger too, but we'll see what happens. Alright, now I've used about half of that roll. Got 2 balls. This one is smaller than this one, but this one, about halfway to getting to this size, I actually took a hammer and started compacting it in the middle of it. So I'm gonna pause and actually compact this one with a hammer a little bit too before we add any more aluminum foil to them. Alright, so I'm getting closer to the end of this roll here, and both of these balls are bigger than a softball. One a little bit smaller, but I've used the exact same amount of aluminum foil. So this one, I must have done a better job of compacting it all the way through. I'm gonna go ahead and use the entire roll. Remember, this was the 150 square foot roll. I'm gonna finish putting on this foil and then get to doing the hammering. Alright, so I used that entire 150 square foot roll of aluminum foil to make these 2 balls, pretty close to the amount of aluminum foil I used on both of them. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of what I did here, I know I did a lot of time lapse in the video. I spent 3 hours so far just making these 2 balls, making sure that I'm making them very close to the same in size, and taking the time to compact them very well by hand up until this point. Now I'm going to get the hammer out and start to carefully hammer away and continue to keep compacting these. I'm not a metal worker, I don't have an anvil, but I'm going to put these down on the concrete floor in the garage and start hammering away at these, making sure that they keep their round shape. And then after that, we're going to get to the sanding and polishing. And like I said, I'm in 3 hours of work here already, so I don't want any of that to be wasted. I'm just taking my general purpose Estwing hammer. It's flat front, and I'm just going to carefully and continually whack into these aluminum foil balls where they need it, keeping their shape as I go along, and we'll see how much these get condensed as I keep pounding them. It's also worth mentioning, these are about 6 inches in diameter, both of them. So alright, so this is what this ball looks like after about 30 minutes of hammering away. I actually switched from the metal hammer to a rubber mallet because I think it worked a little bit better. And honestly, now this one is at the point where hitting it with the hammer, I'm not able to change the shape of it. It's very hard. This one I think looks pretty good, except for I'm having this one flap that's sticking up, so hopefully that doesn't cause too much of a problem when I start to sand it and I can repair that. But looking at the sizes of the two, you can see how I was able to mash it down to this from the shape of this. So I'm gonna get to hammering away at this one, and then we're gonna get to sanding after I get this one down to the same size as this one. I've got both of them down to roughly the exact same size. I've hammered on each of them for about half an hour, so I've spent a little over 4 hours now getting these two balls of aluminum foil to where they are. If the camera will focus, show you just a little bit up close of what the surface is looking like right now. Compacted very hard, like thinking that if I handed this to you, you would not think this was aluminum foil because it's so heavy in your hand. Both of them, I'm having the problem of kind of that tail there, the very last piece of aluminum foil that was added to the ball, but hopefully when I get to sanding, I'll be able to kind of get rid of that. Got them now hammered down as compacted as they'll go. I literally cannot even barely make a dent in these with the metal hammer now. So I think I'm at the point where I'm gonna start sanding. Everyone that I've seen do these videos has been sanding by hand, but I'm gonna test out the orbital sander, see if it works. If it does, great. If not, I'll do this sanding just by hand as well. So see what happens with the orbital. I got the orbital sander out here. I'm gonna start with this 100 grit and see what happens. Alright, so, and I've got my shirt over my face because I don't want to be breathing this aluminum, but it looks like the orbital sander is actually working pretty good. If I can try to show you a comparison, all this area right here I've sanded so far, and if you look at this one where I haven't sanded, the divots are quite substantial in comparison. So I'm going to take my time and keep going through these with the 100 grit, and I'll give you a check-in once I'm ready to switch over to the more fine sandpaper. I will say, if you're trying to do this yourself, doing it with the orbital sander is pretty difficult. I'm having to be very light. The sander keeps wanting to grab the ball and chuck it. So if you're gonna use a sander and try to do this yourself, just be real careful. If you take a look at the two balls now, this one I've pretty much completely sanded with 100 grit sandpaper. This one I haven't sanded yet. You can see, if the camera will focus, a lot of the big gouges have been smoothed out. And honestly, I probably could have started out with a 60 grit or an 80 grit instead of 100 to get rid of some of those bigger valleys. But you can see absolutely already, just with 5 minutes of sanding with the 100 grit, this already looks a lot better. I'm switching over to the 220 grit now, and I'll check in with you guys after I do some of this with the 220. Checking back in after using the 220 grit on this one, and still haven't done any sanding work on this ball. So I've literally been sanding so much that my hands are starting to ache. But this one, you can see, is starting to get pretty smooth after the 100 grit and the 220 grit. I started this video actually about a month ago, and this has taken so much time. I quit, and now I'm coming back to it. But literally, to get to this point has taken me 12 hours of work. So this one right here, we have done 100 grit sandpaper and 220 grit sandpaper. You can see it's pretty smooth already. There's not that many big divots in it. This one, I've started to use the 100 grit sandpaper, and you can see this one's not quite as round, but I've gone and picked up this 400 grit sandpaper from AutoZone. Get in the zone. I'm gonna use this on this one, and then once I get this to its end point, which I'm also gonna polish this after I use the 400 grit, we're gonna compare the two, and then I'm gonna do all that work again on this one till I get two real shiny balls of aluminum. So I'm gonna get back to working. Also, Harbor Freight, the finest orbital sander disc they had was the 220 grit. I was kind of disappointed. So all this 400 grit I'm gonna have to do by hand, but it'll all be worth it because this is gonna be awesome. I did a lot of hand sanding with that 400 grit, and honestly, to me, it looks like it made it worse. I'll have to go back and look at the tape, but I feel like the 400 grit made it worse than the 220. But now I've got a polishing wheel on my drill. I'm gonna put some of this turtle wax polish on it and spend some time polishing up this one and see how shiny it gets after using this metal polish. I just got done polishing this one for a while, and I'm talking about a while, and I feel like it's now duller than it was after I sanded it. What do you guys think? But I'm gonna leave this one for now, go back to this one, get to sanding on this, do everything that I did to this one, except I'm gonna show you guys before I polish it. And we'll compare this one after the 400 grit to this one after I polished it, and compare them once I'm done doing all that to this one. You can see this one still has quite a bit of ridges and holes in it. So I'm gonna go do a whole bunch of work on this one and get it close to the stage of this one right here, and I'll check back in with you guys. This is the first one that I did 100 grit, 220 grit, 400 grit, and then I polished it with my drill. This one I've done the 100 grit, the 220 grit, and the 400 grit by hand. You can see they are pretty close in sheen. This one's rounder, but as far as how shiny they each are, I don't think the polishing had too much of an effect on it. This one, you can see, has some deeper pits in it, but that is all 100% my fault. There's some pretty deep ones due to some of the prep work probably not being as good as done with this one. If I want to get all these gouges out like that one, I'm gonna have to take off a lot, or that one, I'd have to take off a lot more material than I wanted to. So I'm gonna hit this one with the polish just so I can say that, hey, I did the exact same thing, and then we'll take another look back at them. But I'm gonna go ahead and hit this one with the polish too, like I did this one. See what it looks like. As you can see, the final result, the balls are not exactly the same, but I did use the exact same amount of material on both balls. So somewhere along the line, one got smashed more or one got sanded more, but this is the finished product, and I'm not kidding you. After 14 hours of working on these stinking aluminum foil balls, between the hammering, the packing, the sanding some more, the sanding some more, the sanding some more, the sanding some more, and the polishing, just about almost 14 hours in making these aluminum balls. But these are no joke. These are very dense and heavy. Just looking at it, I mean, there's no budging on these. These are absolutely solid balls of aluminum. If you look, they don't have a mirror finish on them, and it's hard to show through the camera, but with using the 100 grit, 220 grit, and 400 grit, and polishing a bit, this is about what you can expect. You can see there's my light there reflecting off of it, but it's not a mirror finish. If you want a mirror finish, you're gonna have to use more than just 400 grit. I'm not a body man guy, and I have absolutely no knowledge on sandpaper, but if you want a glass mirror finish on an aluminum foil ball, you're gonna have to use higher than 400 grit. All in all, cool video. I now believe it. You absolutely can make solid balls of aluminum out of regular old aluminum foil. But I have some ideas of what we should do with these solid balls of aluminum. Let me know in the comments what you think we should do with these aluminum balls. They're definitely not going in the trash, but we need to do something cool with them. So put down in the comments below what you think we should do with these solid balls of aluminum. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description down below. Follow us on all our social media sites. Share this video. Thanks for watching, guys. WHOTEEWHO!